Next speaker is Sister Shehla Rashid. Shehla is research scholar at the Center of the Study of Law and Governance at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Shehla was Vice President of the JNU Student Union in 2015 to 16, and since then has emerged as a prominent face of the student youth movement of India. The student youth movement is growing, and she has made a lot of sacrifices to take the leadership of this student movement, and we are very happy to have her here. She is member of All India Student Association and founding member of the National Campaign Against Mob Lynching. So I like to invite Shehla Rashid to the podium, and she will be, please give her a warm welcome.
Assalamu alaikum, good evening, namaste to everyone. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry I'm interrupting. There is a questions, and I will appreciate if you turn off your phones to the silence or vibration so people can listen quietly. And also, if you could take the seat. Thank you for everybody for coming over. We ran out of the space and we have to add another 200 seats.
Oh, God. Thank you, Manzoor Bhai. You've been a great host. 2.5 days into this city, I already feel at home. Thank you so much for the amazing hospitality. Thank you so much for such a warm welcome. I'm really overwhelmed. And I get to speak after Dr. Hatem Bazia, and I don't think that's very fair because that's a tough act to follow. And he's made a completely emotional pitch, and I completely agree with him when he says that we need to organize and we need to speak up for the sake of our own self-respect, if not anything else. And I completely agree with that appeal. However, I would like to add a few things. Professor Bazia has mentioned how Islamophobia is, taking root or is being perpetrated systematically throughout the world. There is a it's a mixed gathering. There are people from all different kinds of countries, and the experiences will be different. There are people from all different kinds of backgrounds, and the experience of Islamophobia will be different for different people. You can shrug off your hijab, you can shrug off your beard, but you can't shrug off this color of your skin. So oppressions come in all varieties. We know what's going on. However, are we doomed? Are we completely doomed? Is there a way out of this? That is what I want to think about at the moment. I am coming from India at the moment, which is where I do my activism, which is where I live and work and organize. And what is it that we are really up against at the moment? I mean, a common criticism against us is that we are always up against something. We are always opposing something. And we are always being negative. We are always standing against something. That is a common criticism that is leveled against us. But is that true? Are we up against something? Are we only doing negative kind of activism? Are we only good at opposing people and not, providing an alternative? I'll come to that in a bit. What is the alternative and what we are supposed to provide? But is it true? I believe at the moment, many of you here, many people generally keep asking me, where do you get your energy from? Where do you get all the motivation from? How do you survive all the trolling and all the abuses that are leveled on social media? I would say we don't have a choice. We are at a point in history, we are at a point where we don't have a choice but to speak up. Much of it comes to you naturally, but much of it is just a question of survival. When politics enters your kitchen, you can't be apolitical at that time. When political leaders decide who you can marry, who you can talk to, then you can't afford to remain apolitical. You don't have that luxury anymore. What do I mean by politics entering our kitchens? Just to give you a little bit of the cultural context. In India, many of the castes or in many of the regions, the cow is worshipped as a sacred animal, and it's forbidden for many people, cultural and religious groups. I mean, India is a very diverse country. It is not only divided on the basis of religion, it's also divided on the basis of caste and region and many other complexities. Which is also what makes it so fantastic, which is also what makes it so great. I mean, diversity can be a good thing, but diversity, when it's used for political purposes to divide communities, then it becomes a problem. And what we have at the moment is beef lynching, something called the beef lynching, which can come across as a very bizarre thing, right? Because I mean, here, beef is just food. But when you go to India, beef is not just food. Beef is like blood diamonds. It's served in 5-star hotels. It is, an exotic food that you get at tourist destinations. You get it in several regions of the country. However, who are the people who, who happen to be in that food chain of production of beef? Who are those people? Who are the people who rear cattle? Who are the people who transport cattle? Who are the people who skin dead cows or remove their carcasses to produce leather later? Who are the people who transport beef to various places, for example, to 5-star hotels, to luxury destinations? And who are the people who export beef to the whole world? Now, India, as you would know, is the biggest exporter of beef. It is the largest exporter of beef. Where is this beef coming from? I mean, it's definitely not coming from outside. It is being produced locally. So, in order to understand what really happens, India is an agriculturally, it's primarily an agricultural country. I mean, agriculture is one of the major occupations of people. Farming is what people do. And the cow, of course, forms a very important part of that ecosystem, because the cow and other cattle, together with other cattle, provides milk, and it provides many of the farm manure. For example, cow dung is used as a farm manure, where chemical fertilizers are not used, and it's used for several other purposes as well. And in fact, cow urine is used to treat several diseases. And it's a common practice in rural India. Now, the cow, of course, forms an important part of the agricultural ecosystem. All this is fine. I mean, things still here are great. However, what is happening today is this animal love is masquerading as, what is masquerading as animal love is basically bloodlust for human blood. So that is very disturbing. Now, in India, it's divided into castes, which are social classes. You can understand them that way. And a large section of the population is called the Dalits, or the so-called ex-untouchables, the so-called lower castes. And they are responsible for cleaning the dirt. They are responsible for, engaging in all the menial jobs or the manual scavenging jobs. And this community is responsible for removing dead carcasses of cows. And we must take note of this point, because the hatred here is not really limited to Muslims. Muslims are not the only ones who are at the target of this hatred. Dalits are also at the target of this hatred. And of course, Islamophobia often comes in these combinations. You often have hatred for Muslims and you have hatred for the poor. You often have hatred for Muslims and hatred for women. So these are found in combinations. You have Islamophobia and you have homophobia. So bigotry comes in several combinations. It doesn't necessarily come in one particular shape. Now, these Dalits who are responsible for removing the dead carcasses. So again, just to give you a little bit of more context, the cow is worshipped as, the cow is worshipped, and the cow is called mother by some of the castes, especially Hindu castes. So now when the cow is dead, once a cow dies, its natural death, her natural death, then who is responsible for removing the dead carcasses of the cow? I mean, normally you would expect, if someone's mother passes away, they would take care of her dead body. However, this is not the case. She is a mother till the time that she is alive. Once a cow dies, the Dalits, who are the so-called lower castes, I use so-called because we do not believe in this hierarchy, but they have been relegated to that position. They are responsible for removing the dead carcasses of these cows. Now, what happened somewhere in 2013, if I'm not mistaken? Well, no, sorry, not 2013, it was 2015. What happened was in Gujarat, which is Mr. Narendra Modi's home state, there is a place called Una. A video clip emerged from Una, where 4 Dalit youth were stripped on the road and they were beaten. They were brutally beaten. And of course, I mean, this video was not being shot by the police. This video was being shot by people who were engaging in this violence. They were shooting this video and then they also uploaded it to social media. And this video clip somehow went viral and several people reacted to it. And this incident came to be known as the Una flogging incident. That is what it came to be known as. However, Dalits in Una organized and they spoke up against this violence, and what was born out of it was a fantastic movement where Gujarat, I mean a place where it's unthinkable to have protests because the state oppression is so high. There, 20,000 Dalits, Muslims, progressives, I wouldn't exclude upper caste Hindus. Upper caste Hindus, I must add, were part of this. In India, this is the beauty of our composite culture, that Hindus and Muslims together are part of resisting this violence against Muslims or Dalits or other social sections. I must admit that I am proud to be part of this legacy where we collectively resist repression. So that is what we are proud of. And these Dalits and Muslims and progressives, everyone, students, they marched together across the streets of Gujarat and said that please take care of your own mother and don't engage in violence against us. In this revolutionary protest, whose leader Jignesh Mewani, some of you may have heard of, they coined the slogan saying that "Gaay ki pooch aap rakho, hame hamari zameen do." And Dalits, as you know, are they are dispossessed. They are not given access to land. Even the land that is sanctioned by the government to them, even that is not provided to them. Now, what these Dalits did was that they, in a very revolutionary form of protest, they dumped dead carcasses of cows in front of the district magistrate's office and said that we are not going to clean it. They took oath that now, no matter what happens, we are not going to engage in scavenging activities at all. And this incident, these protests, after that they had another protest where they sort of they blocked the road and they removed the Dalit youth, they removed their shirts and they lay down on the road. And after this, land was actually sanctioned to them. So, this example, this is a brilliant example of how we can resist non-violently, how we can organize, and how we can shift the discourse from, it's one thing to say, please don't kill us, please don't beat us, please let us live. And this was changed to, we want our land, we want our rights. That is the beauty of this assertion. And today as I speak, yesterday marks 1 month of the murder of Gauri Lankesh. Gauri Lankesh was an Indian journalist. She used to operate in the state of Karnataka in Bangalore. And she was brutally shot dead 1 month ago outside her house by people who are now suspected. So now it is being investigated. And one of the organizations at the target is the Sanatan Sanstha, which has been earlier also suspected. Of course, it is suspected because none of this ever leads to conviction. They were under the scanner for the murders. Other rationalists, other voices such as Narendra Dabholkar, Govind Pansare, Professor Kalburgi, all these people were murdered in the exact same way, outside their house, shot in cold blood, and this is a pattern. Now, where does this pattern start? I mean, is it new? Has it started today? I don't think so. I restrict myself to commenting about India. Professor Bazian has done an amazing job of commenting about so many issues globally, but I would admit that I am not qualified to comment on everything. So I would restrict myself to commenting on India or South Asia at best. So this has started, I mean, we see this as having started not with Gauri Lankesh, not with Dabholkar, not with Kalburgi. This started with the assassination of Gandhi. Now Gandhi, I am sure all of you know, regardless of your background. And our leaders, our Prime Minister, whenever he goes abroad, he invokes the legacy of Gandhi, right? And he says that Gandhi, we come from the land of Gandhi, we are proud to come from the land of Gandhi. Of course we are, sure we are. But our Prime Minister bears, affiliation to Sangh Parivar, which is an umbrella of organizations, which of which the Hindu Mahasabha was a part. Now, the Hindu Mahasabha is the organization to which Nathuram Godse, his assassin, Gandhi's assassin, was formerly associated with. And right now, I mean, we have statues of Gandhi all over the world. We have statues of Gandhi in many of the countries, including the country that he fought against, Britain. There are at least 2 statues of Gandhi in Britain, in public parks, in public places. But in our country, in India, what's happening is that the Hindu Mahasabha, backed of course by the RSS, which is backed by the BJP, which is the political wing. So all of these are, these are organizations, and this is a continuum of most fundamentalist, most violent to less violent to the political wing, but all of them form part of the Sangh Parivar. And what we are seeing now is that the Hindu Mahasabha wants to install statues of Godse, Nathuram Godse, Gandhi's assassin, in several places. They want to dedicate temples to him. And this, I think, is a very disturbing trend. And this is something that we need to be alarmed about. Because we can, we can always have political differences with Gandhi. We have critiques of Gandhi, of course. I mean, we on the left especially, we have critiques of Gandhi. Ambedkar has had critique of Gandhi. But this does not mean that we endorse assassination. This does not mean that we kill a man in cold blood just for his ideas. We can't do this, and we can't allow temples of Nathuram Godse to be built on the soil of Gandhi. We can't allow this. However, right now, an atmosphere of mob lynching prevails in India, where people are killed, just on the suspicion of having eaten beef. This is not what Gandhi would have liked. Well, these are not my words, these are the words of our Prime Minister. Recently, in India, there were mass protests against mob lynching under the banner of something called the Not In My Name, which is just an amorphous group of citizens coming together and saying, please don't commit such violence on Muslims in our name. Please, we are vegetarians, we are Hindus, we may be upper caste, but please don't kill people on the suspicion of beef or on, for actually having eaten beef. Please don't do this. In response to this, I mean, this actually forced our Prime Minister to make a statement. And what did he say? Our Prime Minister says that, please don't engage in such kind of violence. Gandhi would not have approved of it. Sure, Gandhi would not have approved of it. But what about Gandhi's killers? Are they approving of it? I would say, sadly, yes. Gandhi's killers, who bear links to the people in power right now, are enjoying complete impunity for these kinds of murders. And every time you try to make a point about organized violence, every time you try to make a point about targeted killings of Muslims, the retort that you face from the other side is, oh well, Hindus are also lynched. Oh well, not all lynchings happen over beef. Well, lynchings are not a new phenomenon, they are an old phenomenon in our country. So this is the retort. Every time you try to make a point about organized violence, the retort often comes that, oh well, there is stray violence too. Yeah, sure, I mean, there is stray violence too. But can we talk about organized violence, please? Can we talk about violence that is being supported by people sitting in the union government? And I'm not making an unsubstantiated point. A union minister went to pay homage to someone who was accused of having lynched a man named Akhlaq in Dadri. It's a place in western Uttar Pradesh where a man was dragged out of his house and lynched by a mob of 60 people just on the accusation that he had beef in his fridge. Another guy, Junaid, was killed on a train just because he was a Muslim. Beef was not involved at all. But however, in this atmosphere of mob lynching, Junaid lost his life. And this is what we are talking about. If these beef lynchings become common, the first target may be Muslims, sure. The first target may be Muslims. In fact, Dalits have already been targeted over this. But it will not stop there. If the state gives sanction to mob lynching, if the government approves of mob lynching, then this is not going to stop at Muslims alone. This is going to affect everyone. If mob justice becomes the norm, then we go back to the primitive ages from where we have come. We have gained all these, all of our precious gains through the centuries, democracy, socialism, constitution, whatever we have been able to achieve, we will just be going into reverse gear, and if mob justice becomes the norm, then no one is safe. Not the Prime Minister, not the majority community, no one. No one is safe. But now the question is, how does this mob lynching take place? How does it happen that 60 people who have lived as neighbors with this man go to his house, drag him out, and lynch him? How does this happen? How does this really take place? It's not possible that 60 people randomly get together and lynch a man. It is just not possible. In order for a lynching to happen, there have to be at least 3 things. The first thing is that all these 60 people, even though they may not be formally organized, even though they may not be formally part of any, there may not be a pre-planned murder in that sense, but all of these 60 people, they have to understand, they have to share the same understanding of the situation. The second thing is that they have to share common meanings. Now what I mean by this is, lynching, how does it, what is traditionally, how has traditionally lynching happened? Traditionally, petty thieves have always been, they've always been part of, so if a petty thief is caught stealing something, all right, from a house or something, so it's customary for the community to get together and catch hold of him and give him a beating before handing him over to the police, right? So this has always happened. Let's be clear about it. This is not a new phenomenon. The other kind of lynching that has happened is, and again, I'm restricting myself to India, maybe you will find parallels in other places of the world, but that's really not my knowledge domain. Now in India, you often find that old women, widows, they are branded as witches. They are branded as being, into magic or into witchcraft. And they are often dragged out of their homes, they are paraded in public, and they are often killed. Now you hear a lot about this in rural India. Of course, mainstream media does not highlight this because it's, it's not sensational enough. And these women, the subtext to this whole thing is that a widow, her property is being confiscated. What's really happening is that her property is being confiscated and she is being branded as a witch so that her lynching becomes justified. And that's the third point. The first point being that they have to have an understanding of the same situation. Collectively, they have to have a uniform understanding of the whole situation. The second point is that they have to, all of them have to share an understanding of symbols. They have to share the meaning of the word. So when you say witch, it could mean different things to different people. But people who are involved in lynching an old woman, a widow, they have to share the same understanding of who is a witch, what are the cultural prejudices associated with being a witch. A witch, what does a witch do? She engages in witchcraft, she steals children, etc., etc. She brings bad luck. So all of these are culturally, where the lynching is taking place, these things are culturally shared. These are, at a mental level, these things are shared. This is a shared understanding of things. The second thing is that, the third thing is that they have to have an understanding of what treatment does a witch deserve. Now, what is to be done to a witch? She has to be lynched. Now this is an understanding that the mob has to, sort of share, or what is to be done to a petty thief. If we find a petty thief, what is to be done to him? He is to be caught and he is to be beaten before handing him over to the police. Now this can happen, all of this can happen only when there is centuries of indoctrination, there is centuries of folk culture, folk tales that tell us about petty thieves, that tell us about what witches do. All of this has to be a shared understanding. So now, what the point that I'm trying to make is that it's not possible for 60 Hindu people to just get together and kill a Muslim man. No, it's not possible. It has to be understood. It has to be seen as being part of an environment of hate. Mob lynching takes place in an environment of hate, in an environment of shared understanding. A shared understanding of what? Who is a Muslim? And Muslim as being understood as an immoral creature, as someone who engages in A, B, C, D things, and that is why they are bad. They are dispensable. That has to be shared, that has to be a shared understanding, because even if one person in the mob were to listen to his true common sense and say, hey, wait, what are we doing? Why are we killing this man? The mob could not function. But the mob has to be seriously, severely indoctrinated to believe that Muslims are inherently bad. And a Muslim means something similar to a witch, a demon, which is why the term demonization or demonizing comes into play. The second thing that they have to understand is what is this whole thing about beef? Because, I mean, someone who comes from America and relishes beef, obviously they're not going to kill someone over beef. So it has to be a shared understanding where they have to be continuously told that eating beef is bad. Eating beef is not allowed in this country. Although that's not true, because eating of beef is still legal. Eating of beef deserves punishment. And punishment, because it won't come through the state, because the state has a lot of ambiguous laws. That is why the mob justice has to be delivered. The third most important thing that has to be shared by these people who are in the mob is what treatment does someone who has stolen a cow or someone who has consumed beef deserve? He deserves to die. This understanding has to be shared by the mob. Now, what is happening in our country is that ordinary people, these are not, please mind you, these people who engage in lynching, they are not serial murderers, they are not hardened criminals, they are not paid assassins, they are not mercenaries, they are not professional killers, they are ordinary people. They are ordinary people who, for decades and centuries, have been told tales of how Muslims are bad, how we should not eat cow, how we should prevent anyone from eating cow, how if anyone who eats cow deserves to die, is dispensable, is a second-class citizen, does not have any place in this society. And therefore, what the government is really doing is turning ordinary citizens into criminals. Now, my concern here is not just the Muslims who die. Yes, of course, Muslims die. But the people who lynch, they are non-Muslims. They are, in most cases, they are non-criminals also. And they are being criminalized. For each lynching of a Muslim man, 60 ordinary men who have been mobilized to lynch him go to jail. And that's how the society is being criminalized. That is also my concern. Why should these 60 people go to jail? Why do these 60 people not have jobs? Why would someone just go randomly into someone's house and kill someone? And I guess that's where our hope lies. We are not completely doomed if we seize the moment. If we seize the moment and we tell not just Muslims that lynching is bad. Muslims already know that lynching is bad. They know it. They are on the receiving end of it. But we have to tell non-Muslims. We have to tell our Hindu brothers and sisters how lynching is bad, how that is turning ordinary Hindu men and women into criminals. We have to tell them that. And that is why we came up with the slogan that we want, the youth of India want jobs, not mobs. You know, we don't want to be mobilized into mobs. We want our politicians to provide us jobs, which is for what they have been elected. They have not been elected to tell us how to practice our religion. They have not been elected to tell us who to marry, what to eat. Please leave our religious matters to us. We will decide what to eat, we'll decide what to wear, we'll decide who to marry. Please focus on governance. I guess that's the big takeaway from this whole thing that we have to tell people, because people right now, as Professor out that people are being told that your car engine breaks down because of Muslims. It is true. It might seem like a joke, but it is true. That is what people are being told. People are being told that the economy is bad because Muslims. That jobs are not there because Muslims. This is the basis of any fascist ideology, to create an other on whom every social evil can be blamed. Now, when our government talks about gender, gender is communalized. When our government talks about development, development is communalized. Because there is one thing that the government says, but at the ground level, the implementation, the people who are, actually how it translates and permeates on the ground is very different. The slogan then takes on a different meaning at the ground level, which is very communalized. I'm aware that I'm taking a lot of time, I'm sorry, but I would just like to give 3 examples of this. So there's something in the in the state of Uttar Pradesh, there's something called the anti-Romeo squads. So what is this anti-Romeo squad? It is supposed to be a vigilante police against sexual harassment. So, but this is very ridiculous, because first of all, for those of you who are literature students, I know that you will be offended, because Romeo was not a harasser. Romeo did not harass anyone, he did not sexually harass anyone. He was just a lover. And what is really happening is that the BJP government, which is the ruling party in India right now, the BJP government in Uttar Pradesh is calling these anti-Romeo squads as something that will prevent sexual harassment. But is that really happening? These anti-Romeo squads, these vigilante groups, these have been known to attack couples. And it becomes especially a problem if it's an interfaith or an intercaste couple. Because then, we are talking about a context where people get killed just for marrying outside their religion or marrying outside their caste. People actually get killed. There's something called the honor killing, which is basically dishonor killing. And we are talking about that, and these vigilante mobs, they catch couples. However, the subtext, if you talk to people in Uttar Pradesh, if you forget the media and you forget everything, if you talk to common people in Uttar Pradesh, the subtext, how this is being consumed by people is not necessarily what is shown in media. In media, yeah, it's a great thing, right? Anti-sexual harassment squad, great thing, what is bad about it? But if you actually look at the context on ground, how this is consumed by the voters of the ruling party, how this is understood and internalized, is that Muslims harass our women. Muslims take away our women. Muslims marry our women. So gender is completely communalized. It's not that simple. When we talk about development and cleanliness and all of those things, there is a very casteist understanding, there is a very elite understanding of cleanliness and development and all of those things, because if you see at the development of Indian cities today, Muslims live in parts of the city that are dilapidated, that are called slums, that are, they don't have basic amenities, there's no roads, there's no electricity, no water, very, very bad conditions. And then, without doing anything for proper housing or proper sanitation in those areas, what the government says is cleanliness is a virtue. Who can afford to be clean? Who can afford cleanliness? You don't have sanitation in these areas. You don't have fire gaps between houses in these areas. Who can afford to be clean? And who are the foot soldiers of this cleanliness? It is the Dalits who clean our garbage. It is those people, and people in the government, they have the luxury of sermonizing about cleanliness. Whereas actually, people who go down in the gutters, even today, people go down gutters, I'm talking about Dalits, they go down the gutters and clean the gutters manually. And we are talking about space research, and we are talking about nuclear weapons. This is the situation. I'm here broadly representing the South Asia region, I would say, right? And one of the biggest arms exporter to South Asia is the United States of America and Israel. And the biggest importers of weapons are India and Pakistan. And these are countries that do not have enough to educate their populations, that do not have enough to feed their populations, but we are very happy about being in an arms race, in being a nuclear, in outdoing one another in building nuclear weaponry. I'm sorry, who are we serving? We are here to appeal for peace, because The people who get hit by war are common people. The people who are hit by war are the poor people. For the rich, it's never a problem. You know, for the rich, war just means going from $10 billion to $5 billion. But for the poor, it really means starvation. For the poor, it really means a cut in wage. For the poor, it means destruction. It means environmental degradation. For people living in conflict zones and border areas, it means displacement. We have a stake in peace, and that is what our appeal should be. We should appeal for peace in the whole region. Yes, of course, we should talk about justice. Yes, of course, we should talk about getting more laws. But I think that we need to collaborate beyond borders. We need to collaborate beyond communities. The kind of oppression that Muslims face is the same kind of oppression that transgenders face. The kind of oppression that women face is the same kind of oppression that Dalits face. The kind of oppression that Muslims face is the same kind of oppression that poor people in any country, be it India, Pakistan, America, whatever, poor people are always at the receiving end of violence and oppression. I think, and I make a strong appeal to us, that we, of course we should be organized, of course we should be, and I'm really impressed, I must compliment you people for being, organized on issues of justice. I think that's a huge thing. And I really congratulate the work that organizations like IMRC and IAMC and other organizations that are active here are doing. I mean, it's really important work, but I would also make an appeal to collaborate beyond communities, beyond our immediate identity, and beyond borders. I think there's an urgent need for that, and I really wish you all the best in all of your advocacy efforts. I would like to make one appeal, and on behalf of the campaign against mob lynching that we are doing. We are demanding a law against mob lynching in India, and I would request you to do whatever you can to amplify that demand. We have an online petition that you can share. Swara Bhaskar, who is an Indian Bollywood actor, she has started a petition in which she asks for a law against mob lynching. You could organize something here. You could give a representation to your elected representative and ask them to, take it up with our government. Because the US Senate has formally apologized. The US Senate has formally apologized to black people for not having passed the anti-lynching law. An anti-lynching law, the draft for which had been introduced in the Senate 200 times. 200 times an anti-lynching law was defeated in the US. And recently, very recently, the US Senate formally apologized to the black people for not having passed this law. We don't want to be in that situation. We don't have to commit the mistake ourselves. We have America to learn from. We can learn from America's mistake and not repeat that mistake and pass an anti-lynching law now. And the victims' families, their lives and livelihoods are completely destroyed. If some of you can do whatever you can to support families of lynching victims, I think that will be a great help. Support them in their legal battles, because usually the person who is lynched happens to be a male, and usually the male happens to be the breadwinner of the family, which means that after the lynching, the family is just without any income. And I would really appeal to you all to do whatever you can to raise this demand, to amplify our demand for an anti-lynching law, because we don't want to apologize 500 years later to the Muslims and Dalits of this country, of India, for not having passed a law against lynching. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that thought-provoking presentation and a strong appeal for action. And inshallah we will do that. We have a small video we are going to show. It's about 4 minutes, and which is about the lynching in India. And after that, we will have Sheikh Allah address you via Skype. Sheikh Allah was sick and he just received the chemotherapy on October 2nd, so he could not come. He had promised that he will come to this program, but today he said, this morning he called, Manzoor, I cannot go in public, but however, I will like to address via Skype. So I want everybody to stay, listen, and we will have a question and answers after appeal. So please stay with us, and thank you. Can we have the video, please?
There's a framework of civil rights, there is a framework of civic conduct which is laid down in the Constitution, which means that rights are fundamental, rights are basic to our membership in the Union of States that it is, and these cannot be taken away.
I'm here because what has been going on in the country is very disturbing. Mob lynching is a form of violence that has become increasingly problematic. It is very targeted, it is against the Muslims, it is against the Dalits, so we cannot really fool ourselves and say that, oh, these are just random mob lynchings that may have happened because someone was not getting a train seat. It could be any of us at any time, and it's really scary to see how people see things happening and they don't want to say anything about it, and that's the scary part, I think, about all these lynchings that are happening.
I don't think I have much hope from the government. I think there has to be a sustained movement to finally change things in this country. It's not just about the government, it's not just about the BJP. This is also something ingrained in our society.
Being Indian is not a linguistic identity. Being Indian is not a religious identity. Being Indian is not a particular caste identity. Being Indian is a civic identity.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite a surprise guest who made this video possible. Our own Zainab Ali, high school student. Please give her a warm applause. Zainab made this possible within 3 days. I was struggling for 2 weeks somebody to make the video, but she made it possible in 3 days. I don't know how she did it.
I was lucky enough that I didn't have that much homework that day, so I was able to work on the movie.
Thank you very much.
Of course.